There is a shot in Dune Part 2 that lasts maybe 4 seconds. Paul Atreides stands before 10,000 Fremen, his back to the camera, and they are screaming his name. The music swells, the desert stretches to the horizon, and for 4 seconds, everything in your body wants to feel good about this. Denis Villeneuve spent 4 hours earning that feeling, and then he spent the next 20 minutes explaining why you shouldn't have felt it. Frank Herbert wrote the original Dune novel in 1965, and he was very clear about what it was. He called it an attempt to unmask the seductiveness of charismatic leadership, the human tendency, which he thought was almost biological, to look for a hero, a saviour, someone exceptional to hand our agency to.
What is the statement that you're attempting to make here?
Don't trust leaders to always be right. I worked to create a leader in this book who would be really an attractive, charismatic person for all the good reasons, not for any bad reasons. Then power comes to him. He makes decisions. Some of his decisions made for millions of people, millions upon millions of people, don't work out too well.
He was thinking about the cult of personality that had swallowed American politics. He was worried about what happened when people stopped thinking and started believing. Most adaptations of hero stories don't know they're doing that. Star Wars doesn't know it's telling you that special bloodlines justify special power. They're innocent of their own ideology. Villeneuve's Dune is not innocent, it knows exactly what it's doing. It is a film about the manufacture of myth, and it manufactures the myth right in front of you, using you as raw material. The film is the trap. To understand how this works, we need to start not with Paul, but with the people who built the world Paul would inherit. The Bene Gesserit are the essay hidden inside the story. They are a sisterhood of women who have spent thousands of years doing one thing, engineering the future. Not through force, but through belief. Through the careful, patient seeding of prophecy into cultures across the known universe. The Fremen of Arrakis have a legend. The Messiah will come from the outside world. He will lead them to paradise. He will have powers beyond ordinary men. This legend feels ancient, sacred, and true. It is none of those things. It was written by the Bene Gesserit and installed in Fremen culture like code in a machine waiting to be activated.
These people have waited for centuries for the Lisan al-Gaib. They see you, they see the signs.
You see what they've been told to see.
What does it mean that the prophecy is false? It means that Paul's power over the Fremen has nothing to do with destiny, and everything to do with a story someone told about destiny. The Messiah is real because enough people believe he is. That is the only kind of Messiah that has ever existed. And here is where Villeneuve makes his first move. He puts us inside Paul's visions. We see what he sees, we feel the pull of them. They are presented with the visual grammar of wonder, not of horror, not of warning. The cinematography, the score, the editing rhythm, everything tells us these visions are a gift. We are being manipulated with the same tools as the Fremen. Different medium, same mechanism. They have the legend, we have the movie. Lady Jessica's arc is, I think, one of the most quietly disturbing things in either film. She is a woman who knows the prophecy is manufactured. She helped manufacture it. She understands intellectually that what she's doing on Arrakis is activating a centuries-old propaganda campaign. And she does it anyway, for her son, for her survival, for reasons the film never fully reduces to villainy. Rebecca Ferguson plays her with a kind of anguished pragmatism that makes her almost sympathetic even as she's doing something monstrous. That ambiguity is load-bearing. If Jessica were simply evil, the film's argument would be simple, but she isn't. She's a person making a terrible choice in a terrible situation. The myth machine doesn't need villains, it just needs people willing to pull the lever. Part 1 ends with Paul killing a man in ritual combat. He wins, and the Fremen accept him. The music swells, again that 4-second feeling, and we cut to black, having essentially watched a young man, aided by a manufactured prophecy, begin his annexation of an entire people's spiritual life. But it doesn't feel like that, it feels like a victory. That's part 1's achievement. It made the seduction work on us. There is a version of Dune where Chani is a supporting character, a love interest, a guide, a symbol of the world Paul is entering. In Frank Herbert's novel, that is largely what she is, a believer, a companion, a woman whose inner life is mostly oriented around Paul's. Villeneuve looked at that character and made a decision that I think changes the entire moral architecture of the films. He made her the one who sees. Chani is the only character in both films who maintains an unbroken line of sight to the truth. She knows the prophecies Bene Gesserit mythology. She says so plainly, repeatedly from the very beginning. She is not naive, she is not bitter, she is not contrarian. She loves her people with a ferocity that makes her refusal to believe in the Messiah not cynicism, but the deepest possible form of respect. To believe in a legend is to accept that the Fremen are a prop in someone else's story. Chani refuses to make that trade. Chani's clarity isn't heroic or defiant, it's just clear. She's not fighting the legend, she's simply not captured by it. And that absence of capture, in a film full of people who are completely consumed by belief, makes her the loneliest figure on screen. Her relationship with Paul in part 2 is one of the most interesting love stories in recent cinema, precisely because it's a story about incompatibility that neither party fully admits to. Paul loves Chani, that love is real, but Paul also needs the myth. And at a certain point the myth and the woman become mutually exclusive. To be the Messiah, he must become the thing she has always refused to believe in. The love story is a slow, terrible collision between two people who cannot both be right. The Water of Life sequence is the hinge of the entire duology. Paul undergoes a near-death experience, survives and is transformed. He gains full prescience, the ability to see not just fragments of the future, but its entire shape. And here's where the film does something very precise. It gives Paul everything he wanted, and shows us immediately that it was the wrong thing to want. His visions are no longer fragmented and beautiful, they are certain, and certainty in this film is the mark of a man who has stopped being human and started being an ideology. Chani watches this transformation from the outside. She sees what everyone else is too close to see, and for the first time in the film she is visibly frightened, not of Paul exactly, but of what Paul has become willing to be. She is watching someone she loves choose to become a weapon, and she cannot stop it, and she always knew, this was where it led. The deep South Fremen scenes are Chani's argument made visual. These are the communities where the Bene Gesserit legend has taken deepest root, where the Fremen are not skeptics waiting to be convinced, but true believers waiting for activation. They have no Chani, they have only the myth, and the myth is all they want. When Paul arrives among them, they are not liberated, they are consumed. They do not gain a leader, they lose themselves. Villeneuve films these scenes with something close to horror movie grammar. The low angles, the chanting, the way individual faces dissolve into crowd. He is showing us what Chani sees when she looks at the direction this is heading. Not glory, but erasure. A people exchanging their own complicated, difficult real lives for the cleaner story of divine destiny.
The world has made choices for us. If I go south, I might lose you. You will never lose me. Paul Atreides. Not as long as you stay who you are. I'll cross the storms with you. Go south. Bring your people to safety.
There is a scene in part 2 that I want to linger on because I think it contains the film's thesis in miniature. Chani confronts Paul privately before his final claim to power. She says essentially, you don't have to do this, you can stop. The prophecy is a lie and you know it's a lie, and choosing to use it anyway makes you something she cannot follow. Paul's response is not to disagree with her analysis, he knows she's right. His response is to say, in effect, it doesn't matter. The machinery is already moving. The belief already exists. He can either ride it or be crushed by it. This is the logic of every authoritarian who ever convinced themselves they had no choice. The seductive idea that power, once available, becomes necessary. That the choice was made by history, not by you. Chani doesn't accept this. She cannot accept this and remain herself. So she leaves. And her departure, alone, riding away from Paul's victory toward an uncertain horizon, is the film's last unambiguous moral statement. She is not triumphant, she is not given a rousing score. She is just a woman who refused to stop seeing, even when it cost her everything she loved. In most films, the person who sees clearly is eventually vindicated. They find allies, they change the outcome, their clarity becomes power. Villeneuve denies Chani that arc. Her clarity changes nothing about what happens. Paul still wins. The jihad still begins. She rides away from a catastrophe she saw coming and couldn't prevent it. Her reward for being right is to be alone. That isn't a comforting story about the power of one person who refuses to believe. It is an honest story about what it costs to stay lucid in a world that has chosen myth over reality. And it is, I would argue, the bravest thing either film does. After Paul drinks the water of life, the visual grammar of the film changes. Greg Fraser's cinematography shifts. The pale, bleached tones that defined Part 1's Arrakis gives way to something harder. The softness is gone, and the editing rhythm changes too. Scenes are more abrupt, more declarative. The film stops being curious about Paul and starts being afraid of him. The crowd scenes in Part 2's final act are, I think, among the most politically literate sequences in recent blockbuster cinema. Villeneuve is shooting mass political spectacle with the visual language of propaganda. Long lenses compressing the crowd into a single, undifferentiated mass, low angles that make Paul enormous, torchlight that strips individual faces of complexity. This isn't accidental. He is quoting the visual rhetoric of authoritarianism deliberately. He wants you to feel the scale and the beauty of it, and he wants you to feel sick about feeling it. Hans Zimmer's score in these sequences is doing something very subtle. At the moments when the film's internal logic most demands a triumphant swell, Zimmer withholds it. The music becomes strange, dissonant, ceremonial but cold. He is refusing to give your nervous system the reward it's been trained to expect. The silence where the catharsis should be is the argument. And then Paul wins. The Emperor is defeated, the Harkonnens are destroyed, the Atreides' name is avenged. Every external goal of the hero's journey is achieved. And Paul announces a holy war across the known universe, and 10,000 people scream their approval, and Chani rides away, and the film ends. There is no resolution, there is no comfort, the victory is real, the cost is also real. Villeneuve puts both things in the frame and refuses to resolve them. Here is the thing about the Fremen, they are not stupid, they are not weak. They are a people who have survived millennia of brutal colonial exploitation, who have turned the most hostile environment in the known universe into a home. They are in many ways extraordinary, and they still fell for it. That's Herbert's point, and Villeneuve's, the capacity for myth, for belief in a chosen one, a saviour, an exceptional person who will solve the problems that ordinary people cannot, is not a mark of stupidity or weakness, it is a mark of being human. It is perhaps the most human thing there is, and it is, Herbert thought, one of the most dangerous. We were given every tool to avoid the Fremen's mistake. We were told explicitly that the prophecy was fake. We watched Jessica activate it on purpose. We had Chani's running commentary on what was happening. We were given the villain's eye view of the seduction, and most of us, watching Paul ride that sandworm, felt it anyway. That's not a failure of the audience. That's the film working exactly as designed. Villeneuve built a machine for producing complicity. He made Paul beautiful and suffering and brave and in love. He gave him visions that felt like gifts. He scored his victories with music that made your chest expand. He did everything a classical hero's journey does. And then he asked you to think about what you'd just been made to feel. That question, what did you just cheer for, is the most contemporary thing about these films. We are living in an era of political movements built around exceptional individuals, of mass belief systems that spread faster than they can be examined, of charisma deployed as a tool of control. Herbert saw it in 1965, Villeneuve sees it now, and the blockbuster, the genre built on the machinery of aspiration and identification and vicarious triumph, turns out to be the perfect vehicle for that argument. You can't make this point with a small film that 3 people see. You need the spectacle, you need the sandworm ride, you need those 4 seconds before you pull the rug. Chani rides away at the end, not into triumph but into uncertainty. She doesn't know what comes next, she doesn't have a plan. She just knows she can't stay in the story that's being told. And riding toward an unknown horizon alone is the only genuinely free act anyone performs. Denis Villeneuve spent 4 hours making you love a man it wants you to be afraid of. The fact that it worked isn't a flaw in you, it's the whole point. It worked on the Fremen too. It works on all of us. That's what Frank Herbert was trying to say in 1965, and what Villeneuve is saying now, in the most beautiful way he could find.